start exactly at 5 p.m. and we will start in so that our Vice Rector, Colonel Rajan Pertuniemi, will announce his whole audience to our Rector. So we will ask you to rise up and then attention exactly at 5 p.m. So now you have 5 minutes to straighten your ties and be ready for the broadcast. Continue.
Sir, personnel ready for future military leaders seminar. Please take your seats.
Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to National Defense University and to the conference on future military leaders. All the participants here in auditorium and all the participants from via web. I'm very happy to see the General Staff Officer course students here in hall. You are the future. You are our future leaders. And I think you should teach us what does it mean to be a leader in the future. But as we can see in the program tomorrow morning, you will have a time for concentrate on this topic. And also discussing, and after afternoon we will hear your thoughts, and we are very curious to hear about the future leaders and leading. We all know that future does not just born somewhere. We are building the future. And we also understand that we are building the future based on the present legend, and we are building it on top of it. And tomorrow we will hopefully hear some ideas and thoughts how we are going to build this future. The topic military leadership is very important and I think also very interesting. The Finnish framework for the military leadership consists 4 entities. First, behavior as a leader. Second, the decision-making skills, and behind that, how we are running the process when we are preparing the decision-making, and how we are ensuring that the decision is going to the fulfill after the decision. Then thirdly, our position as a leader. So what kind of organization we are using when we are leading our organization. And the fourth one is the culture of the organization. Generally, from the military perspective, the dualism of military leadership at the peacetime and the wartime leadership creates more challenges and make the complexity even more demanding. Both circumstances, peacetime and wartime, needs continuous training, lifelong learning, and also feedback for all of us. In many fora, a lot has been discussed concerning technological and technical development. But we have to remember that the leader in the based on all, above all, the leader is the leader of the human being. The human factor is present every time in military leadership. As we have noticed during this last 1.5 years in Ukraine, the character of the war has not changed. The war is still of use extremely power and violence to gain the political or other objects. We need, as a leader, ready to adapting to a rapidly changing environment, and also, if needed, response for all changes. And not to forget the innovation mindset, which is needed always for all leaders. Also, still deepening internationality gives a good sandbox to train the leadership skills. This conference is a very good example on that. It also adds new dimension to leadership. I think NATO gives us a good sandbox for that. I count Sweden also on board. We know that, and hopefully very soon you are also member of the NATO. And nevertheless, I think that NATO is drawing the future of the forwarding of the Western armed forces. We also know that also in NATO's context, the individual training and education is under a national responsibility. But NATO gives a common development structure for the whole alliance. NATO forwarding capstone concept, NWCC, gives a good view to the future. With the help of this concept, the allies can cooperate to develop a common understanding of the future of the warfare 20 years from now. It is I think also very interesting and fruitful to look NWCC from military leadership point of view also. For example, the concept defines forward development imperatives to serve organizations and synchronization of allied warfare effect. There is imperatives like cognitive superiority, cross-domain command, and integrated multi-domain defense. For me, all these imperatives are connected to the leadership. NWCC defines also critical employers like data, technology, agility, people, preparation, and the integration. Also these make sense for me when we are thinking about the future leaders. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the conference, and we are waiting your thoughts and discussion about future military leadership. Thank you very much. Hand over to the Tuomas.
Good evening also from my side. I'm LtCol Tuomas Liukko from Finnish National Defense University, and I will now explain you the schedule for this evening. Just after I have finished, LtCol Janne Pukkila will have the keynote speak concerning the junior training and education, lessons learned identified from this war in Ukraine currently. After that, there will be panel discussion chaired by military professor LtCol Aki-Mauri Huhtinen, and at the beginning of the panel, our panelists, they are going to brief you something about 5 to 10 minutes about their remarks and requirements, what they have noticed. And to our audience in web, you are able to raise the questions through our message wall, and we will moderate those and actually ask the questions during the questions and answers session. But now I will hand over to the LtCol Janne Pukkila. Please.
Sirs, colleagues, students, it's also my honor and pleasure to welcome you all this Future Military Leaders 2023 seminar at the Finnish National Defense University. I'm a military professor, Aki-Mauri Huhtinen, and together with my colleague, Lieutenant Colonel Tuomas Liukko, we will chair and host you these 2 days. Our goal of these 2 days are lessons identified and lessons learned from the Russian-Ukraine war, and also the alliance to the future military leaders. First, we will start the keynote presentation from Lieutenant Colonel Janne Pukkila, titled as Russian Invasion of Ukraine, Decisive Moments, Consequences and Changes in the Modus Operandi. Lieutenant Colonel Janne Pukkila serves currently as a special researcher at the Finnish National Defense University Russian Research Group. His previous position was in Moscow, where he served from 2019 until July 2023 as a Deputy Defense Attaché to Russia and Belarus. He also served as a Defense Attaché to South Caucasus, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. He has been researching and following Russia for the last 20 years, and he also a Master of Arts degree in Russian language and culture. Welcome, Janne. Floor is yours.
Sirs, ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned in the introduction, I'm a Lieutenant Colonel Janne Pukkila from the Finnish National Defense University, and I'm happy to give you this keynote speech or presentation regarding the topic you can see, and I think most of us, we have been following what is happening in nearby Ukraine last 18 months or more. My position here is as a special researcher, and as you heard, I had the privilege to serve in Moscow until July this year, 23, and from that point of view, I was able to follow the Russia's offensive to Ukraine from inside in Moscow. Since my theme today is Russian offensive to Ukraine, and I will try to demonstrate the main phases, as in the topic has been written, decisive moments which we have seen and their consequences to the war, and how those moments, I will try to explain and find the causalities between the actions and reactions and what happened in the battlefield, and what kind of role played the different kind of decision-making processes, what the Ukrainians did, what the Russians did, and how that actually affected to the campaign, and how that possibly changed the modus operandi on the field. Of course, the most important question is always why, but when we'll take the look into these points, I think we'll find the answers following the consequences. I'm raising up those during my presentation. So let's get started. As a heads up, I would like to show you how the Ukrainians, this is the Ukrainians' threat assessment during the winter 22, so before the war started actually. As I see, based on this threat assessment from the Ukrainian side, the Russian aim was to conquer Kiev, isolate Ukraine from the Azov Sea, and encircle the Ukrainian forces east of the Dnieper. That was the big overall threat assessment. And in this next slide, we can see how the first phase actually and the attack started and what kind of areas Russians managed to conquer during the first weeks of the war. And as we can see, Russians' assessment was pretty close to the truth. Basically, only direction from Belarus to western Ukraine, an amphibious operation to Odessa, which you saw in the previous picture, didn't happen. Of course, the Moldova-Transnistrian direction also didn't happen. But I would say that that was based on that Russia didn't manage to achieve or conquer the Odessa direction, make the amphibious operation over there, and therefore also the Transnistrian Moldovan direction was not able to happen. Of course, that was kind of tentative operation, tentative possibility, but in any case, based on this, almost everything what Ukraine was assessing happened, except those moments I actually raised up. But overall, starting, in the topic was written that decisive moments. I would say that, and I will present you from my point of view, 10 bigger or smaller decisive moments which actually made sense, made consequences to the leadership and management perspective. First of them is this first phase, let's say, initial phase. From the management point of view, executing this kind of operation, where you have 5 different operational directions, troops from different military districts, and your goal is to complete the operation with very deep goals, and operations is, of course, really challenging. We all know that. We are all military. Main question to me was how to manage and coordinate all the different troops, fires, and movements. That's the military plan. How to support the troops with all needed materials and equipment, ammunition, etc. One big challenge for the leadership were for sure the first days when the Russians started their offensive from the pressure poster and they were not formed into the battle formation. So how to start an operation from pressure posture not to be formed as a battle formation. So what was the goal and why Russians started the operation in this way? Of course we don't know, but since I'm giving you part of the explanations from the leadership side, I would say that the aim of the Russian leadership was to surprise or try to surprise Ukrainians. Similar goal of surprise was that Russians started their offensive from 5 different operational directions, was the scenario which most of the intel services didn't count on. I think nobody didn't really count on that they will start really from the 5 different operational directions. Large-scale war. One of the surprises which Russians wanted to make was the use of Belarusian territory. Ukrainians and all the services were for sure well aware that Russian-Belarusian common exercise in the beginning of year 22, in the beginning of February, was conducted in the Belarusian soil. But since the troops were mainly from the eastern part of Russia, I mean eastern military district units, they were not named, let's say named, as a possible force to involve, because I think people thought that Western military units are the units which are going to attack. And therefore, I think Ukrainians also concentrated their forces and intel services' eyes to the east. So they were pretty sure that the attack will start from the east. All in all, these actions were made in order to achieve a surprise from the Russian side to Ukrainian defense and cause chaos among the defender. What Russia made wrong, this is my assessment, personal. First of all, they underestimated the Ukrainian defense and will to fight. Secondly, Russian offensive did not have a concentration of forces or focus, which led to that they did not achieve any remarkable victories during the first weeks, if we don't count the southern direction, Kherson, Kharkiv, where Russians managed to achieve these goals and cities and isolated Ukrainians from the Azov Sea, including the Mariupol fight. From the Ukrainian side, their defense preparation seemed to be in a little bit early phase, and they were not ready for the large-scale offensive, even though they were for sure well informed about the possible scenarios. And as shown in the previous slide, also knew that this kind of offensive is possible to happen. We should also not forget that according to several assessments and opinions, Russians didn't expect that Ukrainians will defend their country so decisively, and maybe that led to several misleading decisions in the Russian leadership and also in the political guidance. Also, we can ask what was the Russia's capability to complete or conduct the maneuver warfare? Was that only in the pictures, only in the trainings, or did that really exist? Second decisive moment in the war, from my point of view, was the Battle of Kiev. In end of February, beginning of March or mid-March 22. As we all know, this battle ended up as the Ukrainian victory and led to the Russian troops' withdrawal from northern Ukraine. What should we remember from this battle? First of all, I think that the most visible from this battle was the Russian, at least 30 kilometers long column towards Kiev. It's in the picture as well. And what does that tell about? From my opinion, that was an operational mistake from Russian leadership. And why? Because they pushed their forces towards Kiev, despite that there were no possibilities or possibilities to operate with all these troops. They just pushed, and there were no roads, no suitable terrain for the armored vehicles, no possibilities to maintain all the forces, especially with the gasoline. So I can say that we all who are following what is happening, we ask that why Russians don't fight as they train, why they are just driving along the roads, why they are not dividing their forces or doing any actions, but that was because of there was no possibilities. The terrain didn't actually make that possible, so they were forced to do that. On the other hand, the Ukrainians managed to repel the attack. They managed to blow up a bridge at Irpin and prevent the movement of the Russian troops. And all this kind of created favorable conditions for Ukraine in order to start their decisive counterattack and finally kick Russians out from this direction. What to note from this battle also is that Russians' poor coordination, they actually lacked the coordination, they had a poor maintenance, and also a big question is why Russian leadership pushed all the troops forward despite of that there was an enormous traffic jam, or as the Russians call it, propka. I think the first impressions were that the situational awareness among the leadership, among the decision makers, was not correct. The coordinating leadership actually was not aware about the situation. Forces on that direction I think they just followed the orders and principles of the daily kilometers and distances. They wanted to achieve their goal, daily goal, weekly goal, as fast as possible, just to manage to reach the goal and inform the leadership that yes, we have done our job. Thank you for your service. So basically, they just pushed in anyhow troops forward, and they were not considering what is happening in front of them. From the Ukrainian perspective, these depth operations, the column, actually made possible the guerrilla actions along the Russian train of tanks, as I call it, and that made possible to conduct a successful counter-offensive and force Russians to withdraw. All this, what happened with the Battle of Kiev, led to third decisive moment, which was Russia's so-called second phase, War of Attrition and Battle of Donbass. Russia was forced to change its goals, and interesting actually was how they announced that. That was, of course, from the book of domestic stories, Russian domestic stories, meaning as an info operation to their own domestic audience. They announced that all their goals on that direction, meaning Kiev, were fulfilled, and they started so-called second phase of the operation and moved most of the forces to Donbass in order to secure and save all the Donbass people and areas. Russian success in this was that they actually managed to perform their operational movement capabilities. Most of the forces from Kiev, from north, from Belarus, were transported by railway connections to east, and already a couple of days after that they announced that now we are transporting and transferring our focus to Donbass. Some of those troops were notified in another operational area. So actually the transfer of the troops was conducted pretty well, but most likely those first units like airborne forces, they were transferred without equipment, or they were transferred by plane. But overall this phase and all these movements and transfers can be seen as a quite big success to Russian military transportation system and capabilities. And for sure those operational planners who were responsible for this operation made a good job. No doubts about that. Remarkable is also that only then, in mid-April 22, Russia named a commander for its offensive. As a commander was named General Alexander Dvornikov, who was a commander of southern military district, and those troops managed to gain most of the areas in southern Ukraine during the first days and weeks of the operation. Russia's offensive second phase, as they call it, Battle of Donbass, started on the 18th of April. So Mr. Dvornikov started as a commander of the troops when they started their second phase. On the other hand, this phase was started without bigger recovery phase for those troops and units which were involved in the Kiev direction, and it seems that Russian leadership, especially the military planners, was in a hurry to achieve something before the victory parade in 9th of May 22, and therefore this kind of, let's say, small but important issues were forgotten on that time. On the other hand, Russian operational capabilities made possible to shorten also possibilities for the Ukrainian forces to recover and move those forces to defend their own position in Donbass or in the southern front. During this period, spring and autumn 22, Russia managed to gain only tactical victories by conquering Severodonetsk and Lysychansk and started their operation towards Bakhmut. From the Ukrainian perspective, their defense was planned and conducted wisely, and that made possible to repel all the Russian attacks in the eastern direction, and in many directions they didn't gain, the Russians didn't gain any advantages. But the Ukrainian most successful operation was the release of the Snake Island in the Black Sea, which made Russian operation towards Odessa and on the Black Sea more vulnerable or impossible. So that was kind of, in this phase, I would raise up the Ukrainian releasement of Snake Island as a success when Russia managed to gain only a couple of tactical gains. In this phase, artillery played a massive role. Russian lack of infantry was visible already on that time, and they tried to push in Donbass, but forgot the depth of their defense and flanks, which actually led to the next phase and next decisive moment when Ukrainians started their counter-offensive in autumn 22. So that's the fourth phase, was the Ukrainian counterattack. As mentioned before, Russia was focused to Donbass and Bakhmut and Ukrainian info operation regarding the Kherson direction, that we will start our operation and release the Kherson direction, led miscalculations on the Russian side. When Ukraine started their offensive in Kharkiv direction, Russian emphasis and focus was totally in the other direction. They moved their forces to the southern direction, but instead of that, Ukrainians started their offensive in a totally different direction. So it means that Ukrainian feint was done perfectly, and Russia's northern flank collapsed quite fast, as we I think all know. The Kharkiv and Kherson info operation was really successful, and Ukraine actually managed to cover the movement of their forces, and that was also really perfectly done from the Ukrainian leadership. This actually is a consequence for the next phase or decisive moment, which is the mobilization in September 22. In a picture, you can see the bigger picture is a mobilization center in Moscow, where they actually collected the mobilized guys and sent from that center to the different directions and training centers. But in any case, the counterattack led to the fifth decisive moment when Russia was forced to announce the partial mobilization. And this was kind of Russia's reaction to the consequences after the Ukrainian successful counterattack. The Russian leadership managed that, or realized that infantry, number of soldiers, was not enough to maintain all these conquered areas, and if they want to manage all these directions by force, the only way was to mobilize officially more fighters. So that was the Russian leadership reaction for the losses. I would say that was kind of forced reaction, but from the Russian perspective, it was also reasonable way to do that. Already, of course, because before this, in Russia, there was a kind of silent recruitment campaign ongoing, but that didn't produce enough manpower, so the mobilization was the only, but most likely not desirable action. Main recruitments were made outside of the big cities, not to make domestic situation too tense. Especially in Moscow, percentage of recruited men was relatively low. What comes yet to Moscow is that they opened this kind of mobilization or recruitment centers so that it was visible for everyone. Every Russian citizen in Moscow also noticed that this is really happening, also in Moscow. And when they, as I mentioned, they brought to these centers and then they transported them to the training centers. What happened in these training centers is a good question. Some of the units or men, they were transferred almost immediately to the war, while others got a longer period training in Belarus, Russian training areas, etc. But the level of training, what they managed to get, has been also under a question mark. The good question is also from the leadership perspective how all this was led and organized. First time after Second World War, mobilization in Russia. How was Russian mobilization leadership ready to conduct all these procedures, and how the operational command planned to form them as a troop, as a unit, and how and where and when these units were prepared to use? It's a good question from the leadership and management perspective. And of course we can ask, how many of them are still out from the battle? We don't know, but it's military planning and we should know. Halfway to go. 6, 7, and 8. Decisive moments. These are smaller but important actions. And why I raised them as a decisive moment is that, of course, during the winter 22-23, we can see that was a preparation phase on both sides. While Ukraine was training in their units and getting more equipment, most likely Russia was training and collecting also new forces based on this mobilization. But their focus in Russia was mainly in fortifications, mining, and bigger defense preparations. From the leadership perspective, this phase was on the other hand easy, without the large-scale operations, but on the other hand, situational awareness was highly important to get informed about what the enemy was doing and what are our reactions or capabilities to react with that. Seventh is the Russian air offensive, and why I see that as a decisive moment from the leadership perspective is that General Surovikin, as a commander of the Russian aerospace forces, was named as a commander of the Russian troops on that time. And right after that, Russian air forces started their bombing operation against Ukrainian energy and infrastructure objects. And I see that naming Surovikin commander of the aerospace forces in this position was kind of sign or the reaction from the Russian military political leadership that this component will have a significant role during the winter. So I think from that perspective, they actually planned that he is the guy who is capable and the most senior guy to conduct these operations which they were planning. And then 8. Spring 23, Ukraine managed to survive under the air bombings, infrastructure, energy, everything. They managed to somehow survive. but during the spring 22, the preparation phase on both sides actually continued. Starting in March 2023, Russia was still preparing their defensive operations and fortifications, trying to conquer Bakhmut. Ukraine started their operation to be piece by piece affect to Russian operational capabilities and make the conditions better for them before their forces were equipped, trained and armed for the counteroffensive. Last two phases or decisive, let's say, moments I want to raise up in my presentations are in the fourth phase, which actually started during the summer 23, when Ukrainians started their counterattack against the Russian defense. Small achievements so far, taking into the consideration that Russia had time to prepare, starting from the autumn 22, almost 8-9 months before Ukrainians started their counteroffensive to the southern direction. So that's kind of leadership, management thing that they had the time, they managed to do that, but also from the Ukrainian side, what kind of forces they had, what kind of tactics they had, what kind of forces they used. That's kind of fourth phase in this operation, as I wanted to mention. And the last one, 10th, is upcoming winter. Will the air offensive to be repeated? Is it going to happen again, or something else? Are the Ukrainians going to continue as they have announced that, yeah, we will continue our operation piece by piece, also during the winter period? We don't know. But these are the decisive moments, consequences and actions. And before I leave the floor for the questions, a couple of thoughts and takeouts from the leadership and management perspective. In the beginning, phase 1, no coordination, no commander, only separated tasks for the military district forces. There was some deficits also in the battalion tactical group concept. There was a lack of coordination between infantry and other forces like artillery, engineers, etc. And that actually led to that brigade commanders had a significant role in order to coordinate movements and actions. To create a focus, Russians, they were forced to gather several BTGs as a combined bigger unit. And again, that was not a formed bigger unit, that was only collected couple of BTGs, and that actually was lack of coordination, different kind of manners, different units from the different military districts, etc. So coordination and command-centric approach was kind of important in that phase. Also, the war of attrition versus maneuvers. Commanders' role and knowledge to conduct anything else than attrition from the Russian side was questionable. General Army Chief of General Staff Gerasimov announced in Kafkas 22 exercise in Russia, in southern Russia, that Russia will focus on the maneuverable warfare capabilities and operations. And this can be seen that Russian armed forces had a will to change their modus operandi, but it seems that they did not manage to train and educate the commanders and forces to that. Command and control versus tactical changes on both sides. If Ukrainians started to use a new operational tactical way or another uses of a new weapon system, that always leads to a counteraction on the other side which makes the new element more viable and not so effective. So therefore, innovations and new weapon systems and tactics happen time to time. This is also related to knowledge of the leadership, like fires, UAV, counter-UAV, logistics, and all these kind of actions. We can also see that there was differences in the operational arts. Ukraine used mobile defense when Russians tried to concentrate in encircle Ukrainian forces and tried not to stop in the cities in the beginning. Also, the use of Belarusian territory as a platform. As I mentioned, there was Eastern Military District units and formations in Belarus in the beginning of the operation. I think that's kind of try to, for a surprise or kind of feint operation, confusion for the commanders and situational awareness. That made also possible to make front line longer and forced Ukrainians to divide its forces all around the country. And I think that the Russian commanders, they counted on that surprise and large-scale operation will not be possible to repel. One of the decisive moments which I didn't mention was the kind of related to the Battle of Kiev, but the Battle of Hostomel airport in the beginning, in the first days. Ukrainians managed to repel the attack and that didn't go according to Russia's plan. So all these planned airborne troops were not projected to the Battle of Kiev, and among all the other forces on northern flank, they were used as motorized infantry troops. They did not manage to make successful conditions to the operational command north, which led actually to that Russian leadership didn't manage to control the situation on that direction. They were not able to change their plans and react, which caused the chaos in the northern direction for the Russians and gave time and possibilities to the Ukrainians. We can also ask that did we see the right way to use different kind of forces? And why I'm asking that is that the Eastern Military District forces from Belarus, they were forced to Kiev, they were attacking towards Kiev, when at the same time the Western Military District units were attacking to Kharkiv. Western military units, they had the newest equipment, they were trained to be used on that direction with Belarusian units. But instead of that they would be doing cooperation with those units that they have been training. They were attacking to Kharkiv, and instead of Western Military District units, they used Eastern Military District units from the Belarusian direction. Of course, you can always find the causalities between that, but from my point of view, that's kind of leadership or management topic as well. From the Ukrainian side, did the Ukrainians expect that Belarusian forces grouping will participate? Yes, they had the assessment that most likely there will be an attack or an offensive from the Belarusian direction. But I think was their focus too much to the east and Donbas? And I think that kind of led to confusion and kind of chaos among the Ukrainian forces in the beginning. Of course, always we can ask, is there too many operational directions? Yes. Lack of air superiority? Yes, affected. But what is one important thing to remember is that in the beginning, especially, the Russians, they were focusing so much in the operational tempo. They had a hurry to achieve something, their goals, quickly, versus taking care of the operational capabilities, recovering supplies, etc. And I think I've mentioned a couple of times also the situational awareness. Was that correct? Have all the actions made based on the real situation on the front? What was the decision-making process? I think there was a couple of challenges in that. In Russian system, I can see that especially in the beginning, the decision-making process was quite centralized. All the orders from the commander or Moscow and there was no room for the autonomous decision making. And the role of delegation from Mr. Gerasimov and military district commanders, I think there's some disappointments from the Russian point of view. We can also ask that what is the organizational culture? Is there room for innovative and autonomous actions, or should any order or action always to be confirmed by the next echelon or next commander? And that, from my point of view, emphasizes the control of the higher commander. It actually doesn't give the freedom of movement, the freedom of thought for the next level commander, and that might also affect for the effectiveness of the attack or the defense. As a final remark, I did not mention about the changes in the Navy, including what happened to the cruiser Moscow in April 22, but for sure Navy is also not guilty for the aforementioned events. So you can find several examples what made wrong, but these are the events I wanted to raise up. And as you can see, the last bullet in my slide is that during the special operation, Russia has changed higher commanders altogether 22 times, including Navy, Chief of Staff, and that kind of general positions. From my point of view, I would like to ask that what does that tell about, and why all these changes have been made? And I suppose that those changes have not been made because all these commanders managed to achieve their goals and gain significant victories during the operation. Thank you for your attention, and as a final slide, this is one good example for the really successful leadership when you have to ask that.
Thank you, Janne. If you stay a little bit here. So now we have a time to a couple of questions and discussion if you have something to ask.
Senior Researcher Max Sjöblom from Department of Military Pedagogy and Leadership. Thank you for a very excellent presentation. And now we have heard about your main points relating to Russian leadership and management. What about the Ukrainian side? Because I suppose you have some notice related to that. Can you explain very shortly, briefly, what's the differences and similarities if you compare Russian leadership principles and systems related compared to the Ukrainian?
Thank you. I would say that, of course, we can find several events what went wrong in the Ukrainian defense, and I kind of slightly, let's say, noted also those not so well done management operations from the Ukrainian side. But I try to concentrate mainly on the Russian actions. But if I need to say a couple of examples, I would say that the Ukrainian counteroffensive was the success from the Ukrainian side, how they did that, how they conducted that, and also smaller operations like I mentioned, cruiser Moskva was a big success. But in the beginning, I would argue that the defense of the Kherson direction and the southern military district area, where the Russian southern military district units were attacking towards Mariupol, Kherson, Tokmak, and that direction, something went wrong, totally wrong. And that's, from my point of view, the biggest, let's say, miscalculation from the Ukrainian side. Of course, we could say that the current offensive from the Ukrainian point of view is not successful. It's not so well prepared operation. But of course, as I mentioned, Russia had 8 or 9 months time to prepare, and as a military we understand that causes several difficulties for the offender as well.
Any more questions, comments?
No, thank you, Janne. Your excellent presentation giving a very good view for us about the whole story. Would you tell us a little bit more about cooperation with the services? Because we know that the Western world is going to the multi-domain cooperation and trying to ensure that all domains are synchronized and focusing the same target. What about Russia? Do they have any kind of cooperation with the domains or even the branches?
Thank you, sir. I would argue that Russia has a good will to do that. But the problem is that we haven't noticed that Russia has a command operational or strategical command in this operation. All the orders, all the commands come from Moscow, where you have a Ministry of Defense, National Defense Center, plus the general staff. And there's no direct line, or let's say, you can say that is the Minister of Defense leading, is that the National Defense Center leading, or is it general staff? And whilst we are having this kind of trilateral discussion among the highest military leadership, I would say that of course they are planning the operations together. But for example, the winter air bombing campaign, as I mentioned, I think it was something like 7th or 6th decisive moment in my presentation. I would argue that it was only the air forces which were doing, even though all the strategic, let's say, Navy components, they were participating in that battle and bombings as well. So on the other hand, the fires was concentrated, and that was kind of coordinated. But I would argue that the Army, land forces actions and air forces actions, they are pretty well getting to be coordinated now. But in the beginning, I didn't see that there was a huge success in the coordination between the services, especially when we are talking about the close air support or what kind of targets the air forces and strategic rocket forces were bombing. They had a good plan. Now I'm talking from the Russian perspective. If we would take a look for the Ukrainian perspective, I would say that Ukrainians have problems for the use of air forces because they don't really have those kind of big capabilities than as the Russians they do have. But during the preparation phase, spring 23, there was a coordination between the actions, how the Ukrainians they use the rocket launchers, their rocket systems and air forces against the Russian, let's say, high valuable targets, concentration of forces, logistics and that kind of areas. So on both sides, of course, there's a big question mark, are they capable of doing that? But as we have seen, both sides they are learning. Once one element is arising again to the battlefield, on the battlefield, they will find a counteract on that. As I mentioned, like UAV, counter UAV, jamming, how to go around with that, with the rockets and that kind of stuff.
Okay, any more questions? Can you take the previous slide? So,
Yes, sir.
if you think about, because I think this is quite good collections and very heavily touched to the management and leadership. So, what is your takeouts or the lessons learned when we think about our national leadership and management training, or for example, the NATO? Of course, we're coming back these questions after the next presentation. But if you very shortly think, what is the most crucial to us if we think about the lack of motivation, the lack of coordination and everything? Is everything okay our side? Russia is so bad that we have no worry about, or is there something surprising for you?
Well, I would say that we can't sleep in peace because Russia is also learning. So they are improving their coordination and they are learning. They are in the learning process. But what is, from my point of view, the most important based on this operation is that you need to be well informed what's the real situation in the battlefield, and the organizational culture and coordination should encourage you to make your own decisions and give the right information to the decision makers. And if you see that from your point of view that the action you've been ordered to do is not doable in these circumstances, you can always say no or suggest another option. Of course, we have our tactical principles which we should use, and like a surprise I raised up, that's also a good, let's say, checklist how to fulfill the operation. But from my point of view, if you don't know what is really happening, you are not encouraged to give the overview from your point of view to the decision-making process. Then I would say that you are lacking something, and you are not also done your own job as a commander, future military leader, perfectly, because you should also be aware that how this is affecting to the next step. And that's kind of operational art learning process on both sides. It's not only the commander-centric, even though, of course, we always need a final decision. Somebody has to do the final decision, and that's the role of the commander. But before you make the decision, you should have the right basis, right information to base your decision.
Thank you, Janne. Let's move our next presentation. Okay, our next briefer is Brigadier General Sami Nurmi. He is currently Director of the Unit National Defense at the Finnish Ministry of Defense in the Defense Policy Division. In 2019 to 2021, Nurmi served as the Director of National Defense Courses at the National Defense University. In 2018 to 2019, Nurmi served as the Director of Communication and Public Affairs for the Finnish Defence Forces. In 2016 to 2018, Nurmi served in the European Union in Brussels as the Head of Cabinet to the Director General of the European Union Military Staff, Lieutenant General Esa Pukkinen. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
So good evening. It's 1:06, so you can say evening. Sami, Nurmi, you took half of my speech, but I was going to only tell about myself, but now I'll try to find something else to speak about. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I guess about 10 minutes is fine to start off and then look forward to your questions. I made a point of being in civilian clothes because this is one point in my presentation, but thank you. I always get these critics from my colleagues, but anyway, it's one of the points that I want to make during my presentation for future leadership. And thank you, by the way, for the great presentation. And I'm fully aware that the most important thing for us as military is to prepare to be a great leader in war. I will not handle that side. It was touched here, but I think my good colleague Manu will touch that a bit closer in his presentation. I will try to talk through my own experiences, kind of through my career, what I have learned, and I'm selfish. I'll try to impose to you what I think is the needs, what are the needs for the future military leader. Let's say in time of normal times, what are the normal times today, you can ask. But then I also would claim that in order to be a good military leader in war, you also have to be a good military leader in peacetime. And you build your capabilities as we speak. Aki-Mauri kind of alluded to my experience, and as a background, I think it's maybe worth saying a couple of words more so you understand what I'm talking about. And I will actually, I have only two pictures. I'll put this one there. And this is not drawn by me, it's one of my good colleagues, Kari Aabro, who made this picture. And we just talked with Aki-Mauri. It's quite good, actually. It's a lot of stuff, but when you look at it, there are, I think, good dimensions to this picture, and it's about what I will talk as well. Yeah, so my career, if you briefly try to, or in a brief way explain it, it's been long-term planning, international duties, and intelligence work, but then also the basic work for an officer. Some of my colleagues are of the field that I did not do enough of the basic work, but that's another story. I would claim otherwise. I think an important part during my career has been that I have been able to work with both military and civilians, and both in national and international environments. And I think this will be emphasized in the future for you future leaders. This is kind of self-evident. Of course, we are now, Finland, part of the alliance, and Sweden, as said already, hopefully soon. And even though we have all been experienced in this international environment earlier, I claim that this NATO dimension brings a new element to our leadership as well, meaning that we have to be more international, more capable in the international environment. What I do today, what kind of has been the sum through when I have walked through my career in these different national and international duties, long-term planning and so on. So currently I'm in the Ministry of Defense, Försvarsdepartementet, as you have in Sweden, where we have about 10% of active duty officers of the MOD personnel. This is roughly 20 persons. And my responsibilities in the name of the unit is Unit for National Defense. So I'm Director for National Defense, massive name, huge responsibility. What does the JOD do? Oh, this is online, sorry. But anyway, the responsibilities, among others, are maybe the biggest thing is strategic planning, long-term planning. We are responsible for the next white paper on defense for the government. We have started preparing that. Big response. We are coordinating that. In my unit, we are handling NATO defense planning process. totally new for us and for Sweden as well. How we fit the national defense system into NATO demands and vice versa. Interesting process. Readiness and territorial surveillance, the latter quite active these past few days with the gas pipe and data cable you have probably heard about in the news. Development of conscription is in my unit as well. Voluntary defense and how we develop that in the future in Finland. Will we have hemvärnet or something like that? Who knows? CBRN, nuclear policy for NATO, arms control, international exercises, military mobility, intelligence oversight, comprehensive defense, cyber and space. So I'm an expert in everything. No, my point here is that responsibilities are huge in a way, but of course I am, as a leader, I'm not able to cope with all these issues by myself. You need really good experts to take care of them, and you have to trust them in your work. Otherwise, you can never survive this workload that we have. Some of the points on the, I think the picture is quite, even though it's quite busy, it's quite self-evident, and you have the different levels, different formats, especially, of course, in peacetime, but also in wartime that are drawn here. I would put a lot of, because of my background as well, a lot of emphasis on the international side, multinational cooperation, bilateral cooperation. For example, our cooperation with Sweden is an excellent example of how we have developed it and how important it is to know each other as leaders. Actually, Manu and myself were both present in 2014 in Stockholm when this current operational cooperation with Sweden was announced. Your defense minister Hultqvist was there, and our defense minister was then Kalle Haglund. And since then, the starting point then was quite, I think we were not even quite sure what the other guy was doing, but today our commanders, the top level commanders and also on the field, people know each other, and this is very important for the cooperation, but it's also leadership. I'm almost running out of time, but busy slide again. But having discussed these issues that I mentioned, these are some of the requirements that we thought are worth mentioning, and I will by no means go through these, each one of these. But kind of, again, trying to motivate why you need these skills. I mentioned that what kind of responsibilities we are working with today. I had a couple of snapshots from my couple of weeks back. And again, I'm not saying that I'm a great leader, but just, something to be prepared for. A couple of weeks ago, for example, meeting of the chiefs of readiness of different ministries, and the subject is governmental readiness exercises to be held later this year. Then a couple of days later, I was the chair for a cross-governmental meeting, different ministries, Ministry of Social and Health, Education and so on, talking about how to develop general conscription, especially joint call-ups for both men and women. Day after, I gave a speech for a Norwegian high-level course. We had the US Deputy Undersecretary of Defense on visit to the Armor Brigade. We had a meeting with Åland Islands leadership, talking about their situation, and so on. Then we had this shit hit the fan situation on Sunday, early Sunday morning, when we learned about the gas line and also the possible data cable issue. And since Sunday, it's been only this shit hit the fan case. So you have to adapt to the situation on short notice, and then you have to prioritize. I think both of our countries have a really slim organization, and you have to always be ready for the surprise, and then you really, really have to know how to prioritize and trust your co-workers to do the work maybe that was planned for you. I forgot to mention one of my definite highlights during the last 2 weeks. I was in Lapland in talking to the reindeer herders, and this was an official trip. They were worried about the international exercises in northern Finland and reindeer herding. And I was listening to their problems. Sometimes you felt that Finland is rotating about the reindeer, but not so. But interesting experience. But anyway, again, my claim is, to end up, is that you have to have a really broad understanding of the dynamics of the society as a military leader. And the society, be it national or international, you have to be able to negotiate, talk, and understand. But in the end, always, of course, the most important is the capability to be a great military leader in war. I'll stop there and open for questions. Thank you.
So, is there any quick question? We will continue the topic in the panel discussion, but we have time to ask the brigadier if there is any questions.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So there are a long list of the skills required. So, what is your opinion? What is the most demanding to achieve as going international? Thank you.
What is the most demanding? This is the most difficult question, probably. I would say kind of having to do with the ability to adapt and understand different cultures. Really, it's, you know, Finns are simple and stubborn people from the north, and I won't say anything about the Swedes, but when we go and speak with the Southern Europeans, it's not always that easy. It's a different culture, and I don't know if it's the most important, but in general ways, the ability to adapt to different situations and changes in your work and atmosphere and culture, I think that's very important. Difficult question.
Any more?
One from the students.
Okay, thank you, sir. We will continue the next speaker. So the next speaker is Brigadier General Manu Tuominen. He is the Assistant Chief of Staff Training in Finnish Defence Command. In 2021 to 2023, he was the commander in KEYNOTE Brigade, Defense Attaché in Sweden 2014 to 2017, military advisor to the Ministry of Defense in 2012 to 2014. Sir, welcome. Floor is yours.
Okay, sir, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Aki, for the introduction, and thanks for the excellent briefs before me. Maybe we should have had it in D. They have a study, and some of that study is classified, so I only can share with you the unclassified findings on this seminar. About our training philosophy, we say that future leaders, they should understand psychology. They should understand how the
soldiers, their subordinates, and themselves behave in this environment. That psychology is very important, and we go through that in detail with our reservists and our conscripts, as well as here in the academy. And one of the interesting findings for me was, when I was preparing for this, was that the theory behind our leadership training, and it's based on veteran study from World War II. And the most scary things in battle were listed out on that study. And there was a big list from varying from the percentage of how scary the soldiers felt it was. And on the top was the continuous artillery barrage. Then lack of information, unclear situation. Then comes close air support, planes hovering above, lack of anti-air capability. And that's something like today's maybe drones on Ukraine battlefield. Threat of being surrounded, tanks, strong aerial bombardment, lines of communication cut. And all of that leads into different kind of reactions and symptoms with the soldiers. And we teach our leaders to observe these parasympathetic or psychological phenomena in themselves and also in their battle buddies. And then the leaders should also observe the groups, whether the rumors start to spread and there is some kind of overwhelming uncertainty of the situation. And then they should act and engage the troop with some kind of a decisive action, orders, clear orders, and so on. We say that 1/5 of the soldiers, based on these studies from the Second World War, will get symptoms that they are not anymore capable of acting as good soldiers. 1 out of 5 in different cases. Everyone will get some symptoms, heartbeat, sweating, or dry mouth, or something like that. Something you get also when you come behind a microphone, sometimes. However, the symptoms not always lead into panic, but if there is the panic reaction, then the leadership should grasp the situation and stop the we call kellokkaat, those ones who are mostly in panic. And actually, in some of the at least older booklets that we had, the order was to eliminate the guys who are mostly in panic. It didn't say how, but to do something about that. Stay calm and make clear decisions. Issue direct orders like down, seek cover, fire, something like that. And you assume the leadership of the runaway unit. And after the situation is over, you should debrief and go through that. And we also teach our reservists and our officers the debriefing techniques. And nowadays, a lot of this is on PB Moodle. It's not Google, but it's Moodle. It's online, so the conscripts can study that, and reservists can study that in their spare time even. Features of good leaders in battle. You all know that there is a list, and we've all read those lists. Calmness, stability, and courage, does not fear, are those features. But also you have to be just, trustworthy, treat men equally and soldiers equally. And one of the things, I know that Harry Järv was one of the leadership teachers in Sweden. He was known by his men, he was one of us. And I know that he played a big role in Sweden for your leadership training. And I met Harry Järv a couple of times when he came to Nylands Brigade as a guest speaker. And I really had a private dinner with him also, and it is something to just respect this feature, that you are one of us, one of the soldiers. The effects of good leadership lead into unity, within the squad and troops, and units trust their leaders then, and they believe in their own chances on battlefield, even to the righteousness of the battle. Then we say that the leader has to understand the battlefield, the environment, and we learned a little bit about the environment, and the next slides here will describe the Army Academy's findings from this conflict on an unclass way. And then you need to understand what makes a good leader in this environment. So we come with, I think there's altogether 6 recommendations based on these findings. And the first one is that you should understand the environment and know the weapons and how to use them. And this is really a decisive feature. So you should understand how you can use your equipment, and then even the combined arms feature. And it was answered by Janne. What I read from the public sources is actually that the Russian units, they're actually pretty good on the very tactical level in combined arms operations. So it's a difficult adversary to the Ukrainians, as they are also getting trained by many countries and getting to learn different systems. But there are two highly skilled tactical armies on the field. Then the combat leaders should understand these psychological features that I described, and should be able to strengthen the morale of the troops and be a trustworthy guy. And so you have to be, in order to get there, you have to be physically stable, strong, and also mentally strong. And not everybody of us are that. But it's not like a pilot. We say that the pilot must be born. You can't learn to become a pilot, or train yourself. But as a leader, you can actually train yourself, and that's why you're here, I guess, tonight. Then the next couple of items. Now the training. There is in these studies there is one. Or in our philosophy, there is one little study about units that performed well in the front, and they were not specially picked men or soldiers, but they had good foremen, and they trained their units well, and then they performed well. And when you perform well, you get even better as a unit, and even the training, successful training, makes your unit more cohesive, and then you can be better in battle when you know your own performance level. Then, of course, how to sustain the unit. I mean, you need to probably, even in the peacetime exercises, you need to send people back to the tent and sleep, and you got to make sure that you can sustain a longer time. And then even the leader needs to have an XO, I mean the vice leader, who can take over and the boss can sleep. So very basic things. Then we look at the last couple of ones. We say that the mission command, that has, I read Janne's briefing from through it, that maybe and it was actually stated in one of the Western papers that the Russian units in the beginning, they failed at the mission command. So that's something that is still very valid, and especially when the clear situation is very unclear. And here I bring, sir, you said multi-domain operations, this environment. You have to understand the structure of a military operation.
And today it starts from the space, because the kill chain goes through the space. So as a leader, you have to understand why you are in that foxhole and what is behind the bigger picture. Somehow you need to get it, and the leaders need to tell that to their soldiers so that they understand their role and duty in the war. And then the final point is, this attrition war is very consuming. And I remember reading about General von Manstein. It's a long time ago. I can't remember the exact times, but he describes the problem with their leaders, because the Germans were losing in the Eastern Front, and the problem was with the leaders, because the platoon leaders' lifetime was just few days, and the company commanders maybe a couple of weeks, but very short. So you need to have a reserve for the leaders. And then we go to after these findings, we go to the Finnish leadership training and see, are we off track? And I'd like to argue as the J7 that we're still on track. We probably need to make small adjustments. We need to learn new stuff. We need to get the drones and mass use them and offer the skills to the soldiers so that they can survive in the modern battlefield as well. So what comes to the reserve, this is the figures from Finland. So approximately 1,300 reserve officers a year and thousands of squad leaders, and soon 200 professional officers as well per year. And there are hundreds of about 200, 300 under officers as well. So then about the culture. This is about our culture. Thank you very much.
Any short question so far? Any comments? Okay, let's move forward. The next speaker is Colonel Anders Palmgren. He is the director of a Swedish Joint Advanced Command and Staff Program. He is the Doctor of Military Science, graduate at the Finnish Defense University in 2014. His primary interests of research are strategy, doctrine, and military thoughts in general. Anders started his military career in Army, commanding mechanized and light infantry units up to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Sir, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Sirs, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the previous presentations. Very good and inspiring, I must say. I would also like to say thank you as head of the Swedish delegation to the Finnish Defense University for arranging this conference. We appreciate that very much. For me personally, as you heard, as a previous student here of the Finnish Defense University, it's always great to be back here in Santa Hamina. I really appreciated my time here and all the things I learned in your education. Thank you very much. Our rector sends his regards, and we really appreciate the physical cooperation that we have together. This conference is about future military leaders, and we live in difficult times, dangerous times actually, so it's really important. I would like, in a way, to summarize previous presentations with a model we have developed to develop our curriculum for our officers' education and training on the command and staff level. We call it military command proficiency, and we think we would like to highlight 4 key aspects of that: the art of war, leader and team, method and problem solving, and learning as key aspects. And I think from the previous presentation, I think you can, in a way, put many of the conclusions and the points in these 4 fields, actually. And of course, there you can put a lot of different concepts in these fields, but I would like to highlight, if we take art of war as a starting point, the holistic view of strategy, joint combined operations, and tactics. I think we see that many classical ideas, they are still relevant, but we have to, in a way, understand them things more together with the development of technology, communications, and so on. And I think the world is always watching what's happening on the battlefield more today than before. I think context matters, as well as the use of course, of technology. Technology has always been important. How to use technology in new ways, in different ways, how to deceive, create deception. We heard about that in Ukraine, and we saw that on Saturday in the horrible events in Israel. How to create surprise, but also the importance of arranging or creating to sustain large operation. We have seen now in Ukraine that most of the Western world needs to help Ukraine to sustain their operation. How we will succeed in that if we are on our own or working together when for example, ammunition, it's a tight area now that the Western world does not produce enough of ammunition. We try to wrap that up, but it's hard. It takes a long time. And I think we have to have a short view and a long time view and mix and have and work with that together. And that, in a way, we as leaders must be able to combine these different perspectives. In the field of leader and team, of course, mission command is the key concept that we have chosen. And I think most of the Western countries are using mission command in one way or another. But how to use mission command in the future, how to create team of teams in a more efficient way perhaps than we are using today. How to create organizational learning and foster cooperation between civil-military cooperation, of course. We have the different learning environments and all the different, the tactical environment, the operational environment, the strategic and so on, they have different challenges. How to foster cooperation, civil-military, between nation, military, and in alliance and so on is of course very important. As some sort of baseline, I would like to emphasize the thinking skills, the high order thinking skills that is required to be a proficient commander. Critical, creative, constructive, practical military thinking to solve problems, to use method to create systems that is working in new contexts. All of these things could be put in this model, and I think you have heard a lot of different other aspects during the different presentation here this night. And I would like, if you could perhaps in your working in the groups, have to have this perhaps some sort of model for your discussion, I'm happy. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and if you also join the panel discussion. So now we have time to discuss, and we can start first. Is there any questions, any comments? Please. Just a second, we take the microphone in the front.
Thank you, I would like to return to the keynote speaker. You talked about the why and the real topic there. I think that's the purpose of the leadership, to understand the why, the story, the intent. But then you lost me somewhat, because you went into some kind of decisive actions, and I didn't understand how that connected to an objective that connected to why. So if it was possible to you to go back to why, according to you, what was the Russian purpose, and how did you connect that to those decisive, whatever, actions, whatever, and objectives? And if we as leaders can't connect the why to the dots, we can't have a story, and we are so dependent on our computers and system, and we will have that stop on the road. So I think, at least for me, that's what leadership is about.
Thank you for your question. Of course, it's important to understand why, as I emphasized at the beginning. But I would say that more important in my presentation was to understand why these events and decisive moments, as I emphasized, they did happen. That was because of another side, they actually failed to do something. That was their goal. And that was a reaction from the other side. What was their reaction from the Russian side when the defense in Kharkiv direction collapsed? It was the mobilization, because they didn't have any other option. They didn't have enough force. So they were forced to do that. So why I asked in the beginning why question was, of course, to raise up the thoughts among you, which actually I noticed that I managed, because you asked exactly the question which is the most difficult to understand and to answer. So I don't have the direct answer for that, but I would say that I wanted you to think about why these my 10 points actually happened. What was the action and what was the reaction from the other side, from the leadership perspective?
Okay, more questions? Okay, I can ask for all the panelists your excellent presentation. There is a lots of list of requirements, and there is a lots of things. For example, the Brigadier Nurmi showed the military leadership picture where is the environment, dimension, level, formats, and the question is that if we think the environment and the Russian-Ukraine war situation and the NATO development, so how we can find the time to educate our officers to everything? And for example, the Brigadier Tuominen shows that we have to know the weapons effect, we have to be physically and mentally strong, we have to train the units, we have to understand the mission commands. So if you think that there are less and less time, there are coming more and more the new kind of things, the digitalization, artificial intelligence, new kind of weapon systems. And like Brigadier Tuominen mentioned, we also have to highlight quite young officer level all the domains that, of course, they training their level, but they have to understand the whole spectrum. They have to understand how they are connected to the other units, branches, what is the role of the space and the cyber dimension, because everything is available in the conflict and war situation. So how we solve this problem? We know what we have to train, we know that there are new things coming, we are proud of our history, and like the Brigadier Tuominen mentioned, we are on the track. But still, when we discussed many times, we fight against the time. So this is my question, that what kind of preparation or reorientation, if we have to prioritize, if we have to take something out and we have to concentrate when we think about the Ukraine situation and what is ongoing in the NATO. So what is your list of the prioritization when we think about the leadership and management to the future military leaders? Please.
Okay, hey, I can start because I actually have one point for the students. I was thinking about, yeah, you got to be on the field, you have to exercise and so on. But one of the things is actually sometimes you're in the staff or you're at the MOD or somewhere else. You have to keep yourself up to speed. And it's easy nowadays because you have all the access to all information in the world via internet. If you're clever, you can find information that you need to educate yourself easily every day. So, and then in the classified world too, you need to read and get yourself on the right level. Then there are physical and other features that then you need to rehearse and practice them. But my point here is that there is only 24 hours in a day, and you have to sleep too, take care of that, but find some time to educate yourself, often, daily maybe, and read and study. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. According to the model I presented, I think learning is a key competence that needs to be developed. The competence to learn in different, fast of course, but see things differently. And that is, of course, a competence to be able to do that. And I think you cannot learn every little nitty-gritty detail you have, but when you need, you have to be able to learn what you need to do. And I also think to have the competence to understand the situation awareness. That is also something we can train and educate, and to grasp the situation quickly. Even if it's in research or it's in the battlefield or in the department or whatever it is, it's a skill, it's a competence that you can train and educate. Thank you.
Yeah, everything said also. Maybe approach it from another perspective, kind of how I've survived, I guess. I tried to survive, is not to understand everything. And you know, the title is General Staff Officer. General Staff Officer. So kind of the devil is in the detail. If you as a General Staff Officer try to understand everything perfectly, you will not survive too long. I mentioned the need to have great people in your team and the possibility to trust them. And I guess this will be more and more emphasized in the future. That as a leader, you have to have the general idea of each of your responsibilities, but you have to be able to trust the person who knows the details. It seems like often in my normal day, you get really involved in some issue only when there is a problem that has to be solved. And then they call in the leader to kind of mitigate the problem or to mediate the problem. And then you really dive into it. But otherwise, if everything is going well, it's enough that you know the general staff officer level of stuff. Don't try to learn everything, but learning is very, very important, of course, that you have the general staff officer understanding of the issue. And one I don't know if I had it as a requirement, but I mentioned different areas and domains and everything. So one of these, especially during the past few years now, and in this NATO process as well, is one personnel group that is really, really crucial to us military leaders as well, and that's lawyers. You need lawyers everywhere, and do we have enough good lawyers in defense forces? Do we have lawyers that find solutions instead of finding obstacles? That's always a good question, and there's also one personnel group that we really have to learn to work with, and really important for us to be good leaders is to have good lawyers.
Shortly, because I think that the generals already said the most important, but I would raise up on the table that be interested in what is happening outside of your own sandbox. And even though you are not the leader, even though you are not the people in charge, follow up what the others are doing. On that way you are able to follow and get the experience how the others are solving the issue that you don't know. And I would say that in any case you are never too old or never too young to participate in those processes if you have something to tell or something to learn. And this is let's say, I encourage you to take part of the different kind of jobs, group works, and that kind of stuff, even though you are not always the leader, and as Brigadier Nurmi mentioned, believe in your group, team, and someone knows what is happening inside who is the expert in that topic, so learn from them.
Yeah, maybe even more important, you pick the right people in your team.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to individual level now about psychology. There were many requirements, but can you name, for example, one characteristic of the personality of the people that you find very important to make the requirements in the future? Not now, but what is the most important or very important things that we can build up everything?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. I can start. From our perspective, I think different traits, different personalities that can work together as teams. I think that is important. Everyone cannot be the same, so I think the combination of different strong sides and weak sides perhaps also, I think that is the best way forward, in a way not to create, perhaps as we do in the military, try to foster everyone in the same box and so on. I think the differences makes the strength.
Okay, I can continue because this is one of my favorite topics personally is the team leadership and the leadership function as well, where you said we try to formulate and put people into a certain box that they fill all these criteria. And my point would be accept your differences, build on your strengths, because we are different. And then the team thing that Sami brought up is and you too, is very important. I had a slide that I didn't show, but it's evident here in the room that the international exchange is part of our learning nowadays very much. And learn from your peers, as we can learn from all of you, and you can learn from us. And this is I had a clip from the Brits being in the northern forest this spring, where there was also the Boden Brigade with a brigade combat team, at least a battalion, a lot of tanks as well, good exercise. And the Brits say, from us they saw the battle-winning advantage of deploying empowered junior leaders with anti-armor screens forward of our fighting vehicles. And they were actually pretty good. They could orient in our forests with their anti-tank weapons and get us. We learned from them.
Yeah, thanks for the question. This always most important is always difficult or important. I think, as our Swedish colleague said, the combination is important. You know, you need leaders, you need managers. Also in the future, different personalities, absolutely. You need a bad cop, you need a good cop. That combination still works quite well, often in negotiations, for example. Person that would be, I think ideal would be something like you are described as positively intelligent leader. You're a positive person, you're intelligent, you comprehend big things, you can find the glue issue, the most important issue from big data, from massive information. And then one issue, and this has something to do with my past and General's past as well, communications. I can't underline the importance of communication, and that's a thing that has really changed in the years with social media and understanding what that is in the future. None of us do, and how you can use it and manipulate the social media or use it to your benefit and be as a leader in social media, for example. Those are big questions. For example, today we had a governmental meeting on this shit hit the fan case, and almost 60% of the time we're talking about communications. Who says what, when, what do the people need to know in order to keep this situation somehow under control. Sorry, long answer, but communication maybe, communication skills.
I would only add adaptation, being ready to adapt to the different kind of situations as was previously mentioned.
Okei, viisiäs tuli tähän.
General, sir, Captain Saarland, and I have a question on NATO integration. It's kind of about jumping on a moving train. I think we can handle it with some minor rules and twisted ankles. But when you look at the wartime army, most of the military leaders in the army are not active duty. So how can we also get the reserve leaders up to speed on that? Thank you.
You want it first, or I can start if you want.
Okay, Sami starts.
No, I have no idea, but I'll talk anyway. Absolutely right. You said we're jumping on a moving train, and I've used that quite a lot in different speeches. And it's not a local train; it's a fast train, and we are not in the train yet. We are hanging on to the rails outside and trying to get in. And this is a really big challenge. I will probably not answer your question because Manu will, but I think this is for Finland. One of the biggest things is how we adapt the huge reserve system and our training organization to NATO demands in the future. How can we meet the NATO requirements with the current system we have? Can we meet them? If we can't, what changes do we have to make? And this is, of course, this also involves the reservist leaders that we have. But I think I'm quite sure that the reservist leaders are very motivated to learn about NATO and eager to come on board as well. But then we also have to facilitate them with necessary training, education, possibilities to participate, even give them money for participating and so on.
Okay, Sami, thanks very much. A lot of this lies in the MOD when it comes to legislation and service in NATO staffs or so on. So let's not go there yet. We have to look at the interoperability between the field units, and what we're doing now is trying to find ways to open up advanced distributed learning, ADL, windows for the reservists also from Moodle or NATO ADL portal to be able to study both language, terminology, and other aspects of the membership. There might be some hurdles on the way. We have to get accreditation, and it might happen so that we do part of that in our reserve exercises, reserve rehearsals. But I guess we gave or I think I have issued, at least to my staff, a request for the National Defense University to update the English dictionary for NATO purposes, and I guess the work has probably already commenced. But hey, Saarland, it's a long road. It takes 5 to 10 years that we are all fully interoperable, also mentally on the field for NATO. And the language barrier is, of course, a big one, but when you look at different NATO countries, there are a lot of different languages, and you have to come into a conclusion that maybe it's not worthwhile to mix the troops on a very low tactical level, so you can still have your own national command systems and language as well. And we've done that with Sweden. Now we said that we don't mix under a brigade, or well, we're not there yet. We do a combined brigade with maybe battalions are Swedish and Finnish in the same brigade leadership. But the mental agreement is that we have the brigade as a warfighting unit, and that's a national brigade. And then we have liaison officers on the brigade staff. And then in the corps level, you have maybe mixed staffs, division corps, let's say so, looking into the NATO and the future. Thanks. That's a round answer, but still, I tried.
Okay, thank you for the panelists. I think we have now time to close up this day. I don't go to the summarize anything because it's your duty tomorrow to break down these packages. And what is the idea tomorrow? It's you have a title to every group: how changes in operational environment, NATO alliance, and war in Ukraine will affect and have affected to leadership and management. And we heard different kind of perspective, our panelists and the keynote speaker. So there is you have a material, and of course you can discuss and put more effort on the table. So what we discuss tomorrow, it's how we organized, how we training, what kind of training we need, how about the personnel, what kind of persons, people, skills, background, profile we need, what is the interoperability, what is this influence, the information, the question of the information in the battle space, and also the doctrines. Are our doctrines and concepts, are they relevant? Are they on the track? Or shall we update? Shall we do something? So you can be very creative tomorrow. So no limits. When we come back 11:15 in this room, so we have a time to running out your presentation. So we will see 8:45 in this place, and short update and guidance, and after that we start the group working. So my side, sirs, thank you very much for your presentation, and let's take a big hand to